A call for help, and the most terrifying beings answered. The sky over the colony world of Elara 9 was dark with smoke. Huge fires burned across the cities, and the air smelled of burnt metal and dust. The once bright towers that reached for the stars now lay broken, leaning like wounded giants. Elara 9 had been under attack for weeks, and the people were running out of hope. No matter what weapons they fired or strategies they tried, the enemy kept coming, unstoppable and cold. Commander Elian Torek stood on the observation deck of the last surviving command center. The glass walls showed the chaos below. He could see small figures moving through the ruins, trying to help the wounded or carry what little supplies remained. Some had already given up and wandered aimlessly, their eyes blank and empty. Torek had been trained to make tough decisions, but even he felt a weight pressing on his chest. He pressed a button on the console in front of him. Screens lit up with readings of the enemy forces. Ships that were bigger than their own capital vessels moved through the skies, dropping strange bombs that left no crater but somehow killed everything nearby. Torek's hand trembled slightly as he read the reports. These weren't just attacks, they were eradication. The enemy did not want to conquer Elara 9, they wanted it wiped from existence. "Commander," said Lieutenant Myra Finch, her voice tight, "the northern districts are completely gone. There are no signs of survivors." Torek nodded, though his eyes stayed on the screen. "We hold the southern sector for now, but for how long?" He paused. "We need help, and we need it now." The Council of Neighboring Worlds had sent messages. Requests for aid, negotiations, even offers to share secret technologies, all had failed. Many civilizations were already dead, their signals silent in space. Torek had watched as fleet after fleet of allies fell before this strange enemy. Their weapons, which had crushed many other species, seemed to have no effect. It was as if nothing they had could touch them. In a final act of desperation, Torek authorized a last-ditch plan. A simple signal sent blindly across unexplored parts of the galaxy, calling for anyone who could help. It was not polite. It did not ask for friendship. It did not explain the threat. It was only 4 words: "Help us, please respond." The message was sent into the void. It bounced from distant satellites, hopped across relay stations, and finally disappeared into the dark spaces where no one dared to travel. Torek watched the screens for days, waiting, hoping, listening. Weeks passed. Each day, more reports came in of cities being destroyed, fleets disappearing, and entire species going quiet. Torek began to feel the weight of failure. Maybe no one would answer. Late one evening, Torek sat alone in his office. The room smelled of burnt circuits and recycled air. He rubbed his eyes, thinking of the families lost and the children who would never see another sunrise. He had joined the fleet to protect people, to explore the stars, to make a difference. Now he could barely keep the command center running. The enemy was everywhere, and there seemed to be no way to stop them. Then, unexpectedly, a strange signal appeared on the console. It did not look like any of their known transmissions. The symbols were unfamiliar, yet strangely simple, almost crude. A message began to decode. "We have received your call. We are coming." Torek froze. He read the message again. Simple words, no titles, no explanation. Just that they were coming. What? He whispered to himself. His mind raced. Who could possibly be able to respond? Who would come to help when the enemy had destroyed civilizations that were far older and more powerful than his own? Lieutenant Finch entered, her face pale. "Commander, you need to see this." She pointed to the next screen. Images were coming in, ships unlike any they had seen before. They were smaller than the massive vessels Torek had seen in the enemy fleet, but the design was sharp, efficient, and frightening in its simplicity. They were not sleek like most advanced species built, nor were they covered in ornamentation or markings. They looked dangerous, plain, and raw, and somehow ready for war. Torek swallowed hard. "What? Who are they?" "They call themselves humans," Finch said, almost in disbelief. Torek frowned. "Humans? We know humans. They are primitive. They have only explored a fraction of our galaxy, and their fleets are mostly small. They have no superweapons like we do. How could they help?" Finch shook her head. "I don't know, sir, but the readings don't lie. Their technology is different. I can't explain it, but they are coming." The command center became a hub of nervous energy. Analysts and officers gathered around the screens, trying to make sense of the incoming information. The human ships moved faster than anything else known, traveling through space in ways that did not match known physics. They deployed drones, scanning the area, and yet they did not fire. They simply came, relentless and steady. Torek called a meeting of the remaining council. It was a small room with broken chairs and a cracked table. Only a few representatives remained from the other worlds, their faces pale and tired. "We received a reply to our distress call," Torek said. "Humans are coming." A representative from the neighboring world of Viral spoke. "Humans? Are you serious? Their fleets are tiny. They are untested in war. We have sent our best against the enemy, and it was not enough. How can a small species like humans make a difference?" Torek shook his head. "I don't know, but they are coming, and they have responded. That is more than we have gotten from anyone else." Days passed. Torek watched as the human fleets approached the edge of their system. They made no communication beyond the simple acknowledgement that they were on their way. No diplomacy, no questions, no hesitation. It was as if they had received the call and decided it was their duty to answer. Finally, a scout ship arrived at the outskirts of Elara 9 orbit. It landed in a clearing near a partially destroyed city. Torek and Finch went to meet it. As the hatch opened, humans stepped out. Captain Jack Morrow led them, flanked by strategist Lisa Grant and engineer Ethan Cole. They were dressed in simple armor, carrying equipment that looked basic but efficient. They looked around the destruction, and instead of fear, their faces showed calm determination. Torek found himself studying them closely. There was no hesitation, no awe. They did not ask for explanations or maps. They simply said, "Show us the enemy." He blinked. We can do that," he said, "but it is impossible to fight them with what we have." Morrow smiled faintly, not smug but confident. "Then we will change what is possible." The humans began their work immediately. They set up defensive positions, repaired what equipment could be saved, and prepared the survivors for evacuation. They did not wait for permission or instructions. They acted. And as the enemy approached the southern sector, the humans were ready, standing like a wall that refused to bend. Torek watched them and felt a strange hope he had not felt in weeks. He did not know if these humans were strong, clever, or lucky. He only knew one thing: they had answered the call when no one else would. And in that moment, the impossible seemed possible. As night fell over the ruins of Elara 9, the fires burning in the distance reflected in the calm eyes of the humans. They did not fear the darkness. They did not mourn the dead around them. They simply prepared. And Torek realized something that no one had understood before. Sometimes, the most terrifying beings in the galaxy are the ones who refuse to run, no matter what stands in their way. The humans did not wait for permission. They moved quickly across the ruined streets of Elara 9, setting up defensive positions where no one else thought it was possible. Captain Jack Morrow walked ahead of the others, scanning the horizon with a quiet, steady gaze. Strategist Lisa Grant followed, holding a small device that displayed the enemy positions and patterns, while engineer Ethan Cole examined the damaged machines left behind by the colony. Commander Torek and Lieutenant Mara Finch watched from the command center. Through the wide viewing windows, they could see the humans working. There were no delays, no hesitation. Every action was precise, efficient, and confident. Torek could not help but feel uneasy. These humans were not like any other species he had known. They did not panic when danger was near. They did not argue over decisions. They acted as if the enemy had already been defeated in their minds. "They are too calm," Finch said quietly. "It's unsettling," Torek nodded. "I know. I have seen many species in war. None move like this. None act with such certainty." Meanwhile, on the ground, the humans began assessing the enemy forces that had already occupied parts of the city. The attackers were strange, dark creatures with mechanical suits and glowing red eyes. They moved in waves, destroying everything in their path. Torek had never seen anything like them. His fleets had lost against them before, and now the humans were walking directly into the areas the enemy controlled. Morrow crouched behind a broken wall and watched the enemy patrols. "They think they are hunting survivors," he said calmly. "We will let them think that for now. It will make them careless." Grant raised an eyebrow. "You really plan to fight them head-on?" Morrow shrugged. "Not just fight. We will show them we are not afraid. That is how you win when the odds are against you." Ethan Cole checked the weapons they had brought. They were simple compared to the high-tech armaments of the Coalition, but each was effective in ways no one had predicted. "These should slow them down," he said, "but the real advantage is how we move. They will never expect it." Torek could not believe what he was seeing on the main viewing screen. The humans were walking through enemy territory without shields, without heavy fleets, and yet they seemed unharmed. The enemy fired, bombs dropped, and weapons glowed in the dark, but every human moved with precision, dodging, countering, and sometimes disappearing before the enemy could aim properly. "This is impossible," Finch muttered. "No one survives like that." Torek did not reply. He could only watch as humans pushed the enemy back. They rescued civilians along the way, carrying children and the injured through narrow alleys while shooting and disabling enemy units. Every step they took was calculated, every action measured, yet they moved with speed and purpose. By the second day, the humans had cleared a small area of the city and set up a temporary command point. They did not wait for approval from Torek or the Council. Instead, they organized the survivors into teams, giving simple instructions. Stay together, follow humans, do not panic. The people, exhausted and broken, obeyed without question. Torek realized something strange. Humans did not act like other species he had known. They did not fear death in the same way. They did not panic at impossible odds. And when they fought, it was as if they had already accepted that failure was not an option. Late that night, Torek met with Captain Morrow and his team. They gathered in the command center, now half repaired by human engineers. Morrow leaned back in a chair, his armor scratched but still functional. Grant stood beside him, calm and observing, while Cole tinkered with a small mechanical device on the table. "Commander Torek," Morrow began, "we need maps of the enemy positions. We do not need your permission, but your knowledge will save time." Torek handed over the data. "Be careful. They are unlike anything we have faced before. My fleets could not stop them." Morrow glanced at the screens, studying the enemy forces. "Then we will not use fleets in the usual way. We will use speed, intelligence, and adaptation. The enemy does not change. They repeat the same patterns. That is their weakness." Grant added, "We need civilians out of danger zones. They can help, but only if we move them strategically." Cole spoke without looking up from his device. "We also need weapons repaired. The humans I saw here can handle a lot, but the machines will fail if we don't make them ready. Simple repairs and quick modifications are enough." Torek felt a mix of relief and fear. Relief that humans had arrived, fear of just how terrifying they truly were. They were small in numbers compared to the enemy, but every action they took seemed to turn the impossible into reality. The next morning, humans moved out again. This time, they split into small squads, flanking the enemy positions from multiple directions. Torek and Finch watched as explosions erupted, but instead of retreating, the humans advanced. Enemy units tried to regroup, but the humans were faster, smarter, and unpredictable. Torek could hear reports over the comms. Entire squads of the enemy were destroyed within minutes of encountering humans. Civilians were saved, supplies recovered, and territory reclaimed. Every move the humans made seemed to shock the enemy. They were not used to this level of aggression from survivors. They expected fear, hesitation, and surrender. Instead, they found determination, skill, and an unyielding will to fight. By the third day, the humans had cleared several blocks of the city and established strongholds for the survivors. Torek received reports that other nearby colonies, previously silent, had begun transmitting signals of hope. The humans' arrival had changed everything. Where once despair had ruled, now there was a spark of belief. At the command center, Torek met again with the humans. "Your methods, they are not like anything we know," he said. "How do you fight like this?" Morrow smiled faintly. "We adapt. We do not wait for perfection. We act, we learn, and we adjust. Fear slows others. We use it, but do not let it control us." Grant added, "The enemy relies on repetition, predictability. We do not give them that." Cole showed some devices he had modified. Even simple tools become powerful if used differently. Sometimes intelligence wins where strength fails. Torek was silent. He had thought he understood war. He had trained in fleet maneuvers, defensive strategies, and diplomatic battles. Yet here were humans, small in numbers, simple in appearance, defeating an enemy that had destroyed countless advanced civilizations. Night fell again, and the city, though scarred, was safer. Fires still burned in distant areas, but for the first time in weeks, survivors moved without fear of instant death. Children played quietly among the ruins while humans patrolled, always alert, always ready. Torek walked through the city streets, watching the humans work. He saw how they coordinated without speaking, how their eyes scanned every corner, and how they saved lives without hesitation. Civilians whispered stories of how humans had moved through enemy lines as if the enemy did not exist. Some claimed they had seen humans vanish and reappear moments later, attacking from a place no one thought possible. For the first time, Torek began to understand why the human response to the call for help had been so simple. They did not ask questions, they did not hesitate, and they did not fear death. They acted because action was the only option. Their strength came from persistence, adaptability, and determination. As he returned to the command center, Torek received another report. The enemy, surprised by the humans' speed and intelligence, had begun retreating from areas they had held for weeks. Small units fled in disarray, leaving behind weapons, supplies, and even prisoners. The humans had done what the coalition could not, force the enemy to fear them. Torek sat down and allowed himself a moment of relief. He had called for help, and help had arrived, but it was not the help he had expected. These humans were terrifying in their efficiency, calmness, and determination. They were small in number, but their presence changed the battlefield. They were more than allies, they were a force that the galaxy had underestimated. That night, Torek looked out at the dark sky. Stars twinkled above, indifferent to the suffering below. Yet among them, humans had come, answering a call that no one else dared to answer. He thought of the words in the distress message, "Help us, please respond." And he realized that the galaxy had received an answer that no one could ignore. Humans were here. They were calm, precise, and relentless, and they would not stop until the impossible was done. The enemy had faced death before, but never like this. The humans were not just fighting, they were reshaping the rules of survival. And Torek understood that the world of Elara 9 had survived only because something new and terrifying had arrived. Something that other civilizations had never truly understood. The humans worked through the night, repairing defenses, tending to survivors, and preparing for the next encounter. Torek watched them and knew that the fight was far from over, but for the first time he believed it could be won. The humans did not wait for the enemy to strike again. From the moment they arrived, Captain Jack Morrow and his team had made it clear. They would take the fight to the enemy. Torek watched as humans moved through the ruined city with the calm precision of predators. Every step they took seemed measured, as if they had already studied the enemy's every weakness. By morning, they had gathered all the civilians who could walk. Human squads carried supplies, rescued the wounded, and set up temporary shelters. But unlike any other species, they did not waste time. Their attention was not on comfort or ceremony, it was on the enemy. "They are preparing for something big," Lieutenant Mara Finch said, her voice tight as she watched the human teams move. "I can feel it." "They are not just defending, they are planning to strike," Torek nodded. "That is what makes them terrifying. They do not just survive, they change the fight entirely." Morrow had already studied the enemy patterns. Small units moved in predictable waves, following the same attack routes they had used for weeks. They thought they had the humans' attention, but humans were always 2 steps ahead. Morrow whispered to Grant and Cole, "We need to hit them where they least expect. Divide, confuse, and force them to react." Grant nodded, tapping a few commands into her handheld device. "I've calculated the optimal paths. Small squads can move in and strike multiple points simultaneously without heavy support." Cole checked the weapons and devices he had repaired. "These are simple upgrades, some explosives, some automated drones, nothing fancy, but combined with movement, they will break the enemy lines." Torek watched as humans moved out in small, fast teams. Each squad disappeared from one location and reappeared in another, striking the enemy with rapid attacks before vanishing again. The enemy tried to regroup, but the humans' speed and unpredictability made them useless. By the second day, reports reached Torek that entire enemy units had been destroyed in minutes. What survived often retreated in confusion, leaving weapons, machines, and supplies behind. Torek could not hide his astonishment. The humans were not just winning, they were reshaping the battlefield. "They fight differently than anything we've seen," Finch said. "It's not just strategy, they don't fear the enemy, they don't wait, they adapt instantly." Torek nodded. "It's terrifying and brilliant." On the ground, Morrow led a small squad through a partially destroyed district. They approached an enemy stronghold that had resisted all previous attacks. The humans paused only for a moment, scanning the area. Then, without warning, they struck. Explosives set by Cole disabled the outer defenses. Morrow led the squad through the breach, moving silently and with deadly efficiency. They took out enemy sentries before the alarm could sound. Within minutes, they had cleared the stronghold, freeing prisoners and capturing weapons for later use. Back at the command center, Torek watched the live feed. How are they so fast?" he whispered. "No one moves like this." Grant responded calmly from the feed. "We train to react without thinking. Fear slows others. We use it to sharpen our focus, not control it." Torek realized then that humans had an instinct he had never seen in any other species. They were fearless, adaptive, and relentless. Their strength did not come from sheer numbers or advanced technology. It came from the way they thought, moved, and refused to surrender. By the third day, the humans' actions had caused a ripple across the battlefield. Enemy forces that had once been confident began to retreat from multiple sectors. They abandoned positions, leaving behind supplies and machines. The humans had forced the enemy to respect them in ways no other species had managed. Morrow stood on a broken rooftop overlooking a retreating enemy force. He spoke to Grant and Cole. "They are learning, but too slowly. If we keep moving, we can finish them before they adapt completely." Grant nodded. "We need to strike the command nodes next." "That is where their control is weakest," Cole added, "and we can use what we captured yesterday. Even simple weapons in the right hands become unstoppable." Torek and Finch could not believe what they were seeing on the screens. The humans moved like a single organism, fast and coordinated without confusion or hesitation. The enemy fired everything they had, but it was never enough. Each human squad adapted instantly, dodging attacks, countering, and pressing forward. Civilians who watched the humans fight whispered stories. Some claimed they saw humans vanish in one place and appear in another, striking from unexpected angles. Others said that humans seemed to know where the enemy would move before they did. Torek understood why these stories spread so quickly. The humans were terrifying, not just in skill, but in their unpredictability. By the fourth day, the enemy's morale had collapsed. Units that had once been unstoppable were now disorganized and confused. The humans pressed forward relentlessly, striking the enemy command centers and disrupting communication lines. Torek received reports that prisoners captured by the humans were unharmed and organized to help with the effort. Humans were not just fighters. They were organizers, rescuers, and destroyers all at once. Morrow and his team prepared for a final assault on the central enemy hub. It was heavily guarded and surrounded by automated defenses. Torek watched as humans approached, their confidence unshaken. "They don't hesitate," he said. "They don't even flinch." The attack began with a coordinated strike. Cole's modified explosives disabled the outer defenses, while Grant's calculations ensured the humans moved in perfect timing. Morrow led the charge, moving swiftly and striking with precision. The enemy fought back fiercely, but humans adapted instantly. Each attack was countered, each defense bypassed until the hub was breached. Inside, the humans confronted the enemy leaders. These were the strongest, most dangerous units, but the humans were calm. They struck with speed and intelligence, dismantling the command structure before the enemy could react. Within hours, the central hub fell and the remaining forces scattered in disarray. Torek could not hide his amazement. "They did it! They actually did it!" Finch nodded. "It's not just technology. They think differently. They fight differently. That is why they win." Morrow looked around the hub, his team exhausted but unharmed. "We did not win because we are stronger," he said. "We won because we never stopped moving. Because we never accepted failure, and because we adapt faster than they can." Torek realized that humans were unlike any other species he had encountered. They were small, simple in appearance, and seemed ordinary. But their strength was not in what they had, it was in what they were. Determined, adaptable, fearless, and relentless. The aftermath of the battle left the city in ruins, but alive. Civilians moved through the streets, no longer afraid. They whispered stories of humans who had fought and saved them in ways no one else could. Torek walked through the streets, watching humans organize the survivors and repair what they could. "They are more than warriors," Finch said quietly. "They are something else entirely." Torek nodded. "They are terrifying, not because they are cruel or strong, but because they never give up. They never stop. And when they fight, they do not fear the impossible." As night fell over the city, humans patrolled, repaired, and prepared for the next threat. Torek watched them and understood something profound. The enemy was defeated not just by weapons, but by humans themselves. Their fearlessness, adaptability, and determination had reshaped the battle. The enemy that had destroyed countless civilizations had been forced to retreat, scattered, and broken by a small group of humans. Torek knew the galaxy would never forget this day. He also knew that humans were not just allies. They were a force that changed the rules of survival entirely. Torek looked at the humans working through the night. Calm, precise, and relentless, they moved like shadows, striking when needed, helping when needed, and never resting. He realized that the galaxy had misjudged humans for centuries. They were not just survivors, they were the ultimate fighters. And when the universe cried out for help, humanity answered in a way that no one could have imagined. The enemy was gone. What remained of their forces fled across the galaxy, leaving behind weapons, machines, and ruined cities. The survivors of Elara 9 and nearby colonies were alive for the first time in weeks without fear. Commander Torek walked through the streets, observing the humans at work. Captain Jack Morrow, strategist Lisa Grant, and engineer Ethan Cole moved among the civilians, organizing recovery efforts, repairing equipment, and tending to the wounded. Torek had watched them fight, and he still could not fully understand it. They were not the strongest, not the fastest, and not the most advanced. Yet they had defeated an enemy that had destroyed entire civilizations. How could a species so ordinary in appearance do something so extraordinary? "They are not like us," Lieutenant Mara Finch said quietly. "Not just in battle, in everything. They do not seem afraid of failure or death. They act. That is their power." Torek nodded, looking at the humans repairing a collapsed building. "It is terrifying, yes. But it is also beautiful. They give hope where there was none." The humans did not stop after the battle. While the enemy scattered, they began organizing defenses for the cities that remained. They set up patrols, repaired damaged infrastructure, and trained survivors in basic safety and defense. They moved as a single, coordinated force, yet they also cared for the people around them. Children who had been terrified of the dark now played under the watchful eyes of humans. Families began to rebuild homes with the guidance of human engineers. Torek noticed something else. While humans were fearsome in battle, they did not take control. They did not demand positions of power over the surviving colonies. Instead, they offered help, guidance, and protection. Their strength was not for domination, it was for survival and aid. One evening, Torek met with Morrow in the command center. The humans had set up a temporary operations hub, running repairs on communications, tracking remaining enemy movements, and coordinating with survivors. "You have changed the course of this world," Torek said, "and perhaps the galaxy. How do you do it?" Morrow looked at him, calm as always. "We do not rely on fear, strength, or technology alone. We act. We adapt. We help those who cannot help themselves. That is what makes the impossible possible." Grant added, "We do not see obstacles as permanent. We see them as challenges." "That is why the enemy could not stop us." Cole smiled faintly. "And sometimes simple ideas and simple tools work better than complex machines. People think complexity means power. It does not. Persistence does." Torek sat down and allowed himself a moment of reflection. The humans had done more than save Elara 9. They had shown what a species could achieve when it refused to accept defeat. They had turned despair into hope, fear into action, and chaos into order. Over the next weeks, the humans continued their work. They mapped the galaxy for remaining enemy movements, trained survivors in basic combat, and repaired as much as they could of what had been destroyed. Their presence changed the survivors' outlook completely. Where once people had been paralyzed with fear, now they moved with purpose. They rebuilt homes, reopened markets, and began farming again. Children laughed, adults worked together. Life returned slowly yet surely. Torek watched a human squad move through a nearby district, carrying supplies and repairing a broken energy line. The civilians followed without question, learning as they went. Torek realized then that humans were more than warriors. They were teachers, leaders, and guides. Their strength was not in domination, but in influence. They inspired others to act, to survive, and to thrive. The remaining enemy forces tried to regroup in distant systems, but humans pursued them, not recklessly but strategically. Torek received reports of human squads moving through enemy territory, striking only when necessary, capturing prisoners, and reclaiming territory. Each success brought more hope to the galaxy. One day, a messenger arrived from a neighboring system that had been silent for months. The humans had already reached it and organized the survivors. The message was simple. Humans saved us. We thought we were lost, but they showed us we are not. Torek read the message aloud in the command center. Finch looked at him, eyes wide. They are spreading faster than we thought, not just their power, but their influence. Other worlds are hearing of them, seeing them, and believing in them. Torek nodded slowly. Yes. That is the most important thing. They do not just fight, they give others the courage to fight as well. That is why they are terrifying, not because they destroy, but because they show others what survival really means. Morrow and his team were still moving through the galaxy. They never lingered too long, never took control, never demanded gratitude. They acted where they were needed and left only when others could continue on their own. Torek realized that humans were not conquerors, they were catalysts. As weeks turned into months, Elara 9 and surrounding colonies were rebuilt. The humans' work made the cities functional again, even better than before. Energy systems were repaired, transport lines restored, and defenses strengthened. Survivors began to thrive. They no longer feared the enemy because they had seen humans face it without hesitation and survive. Torek finally understood the truth. Humans were not powerful in the same way as the other advanced species. They were not invincible, and their technology was not unbeatable. But they were relentless. They adapted. They refused to surrender, and that made them more dangerous than any weapon. One night, Torek stood outside the command center looking at the stars. He remembered the day they had sent the call for help. Weeks had passed, and the galaxy had been changed forever. Humans had answered a desperate plea, and in doing so, they had reshaped the rules of survival. They are not just warriors, Finch said beside him quietly. They are the reason the galaxy survives, Torek nodded. Yes. And they are terrifying, not in a way that makes others flee, but in a way that shows what determination and courage can do. They are not bound by fear. They do not stop. They adapt. They survive. Across the galaxy, humans continued their mission. They traveled to distant systems still threatened by remnants of the enemy. They freed prisoners, repaired damaged worlds, and taught the survivors how to defend themselves. Everywhere they went, hope returned. Torek often watched from his command center, sometimes feeling awe, sometimes fear. Humans were unpredictable, relentless, and astonishing. They were not the strongest, yet they were the most dangerous in a way no one had expected. The galaxy had called for help, and they had answered. One final message was sent by Torek to the human leaders. It was simple. Thank you for saving us. You have changed the galaxy, and you have shown what a species can do when it refuses to surrender. Morrow's reply was as simple as ever. We do what is needed. That is all. The galaxy can survive if it learns to act, adapt, and never give up. Torek read the message and felt a strange mix of relief and awe. Humans had arrived when no one else would. They had faced impossible odds, destroyed a terrifying enemy, and inspired hope across countless worlds. And still, they did not stop. The galaxy would remember this time. The galaxy would remember the humans who came in response to a simple call for help. They were calm, fearless, precise, and unstoppable when needed. They had saved countless lives, reshaped the battlefield, and given hope where none had existed. Torek finally understood that humans were more than allies. They were the force that reminded the galaxy what it meant to survive. Not through fear, not through power alone, but through persistence, courage, and the refusal to surrender. The stars shone quietly above, but down below the humans worked, always moving forward, always ready. They had answered a call for help, and in doing so they had become the most terrifying beings the galaxy had ever seen. And somewhere deep inside, Torek knew this truth. Humanity would never stop. They would never give up. And the universe would never be the same again.